Hey, Adam. Thank you for doing what you're doing for the students. We need English people so much now, and writers too, for what it's worth. Grammar actually matters, it helps you think. Colorado, San Francisco, Iowa, two San Franciscos, Iowa, Pittsburgh. Oh, I love Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's a great town. Pittsburgh's a great town. South Dakota. Um, Lots going on in South Dakota today. Um, Jennifer, I assume you live in a town called Misery? All right, so I'm going to be doing these more often, although probably, as I say, I am moving a lot of my stuff to YouTube and so on. It's been a crazy weekend, and I just have not really managed to get my feet under me. So here I am. Yes, the best way to get things to me is to email them to me. Use my Boston College address is what comes up when you Google me, not any of the other ones that come up, which don't come to me. All right, I'm gonna do this quickly because I don't want to hold you too long. I know it's Sunday night, and of course Groundhog Day, and I would love to tell you the history of Groundhog Day, but instead I'll tell you about the country today. So it's been quite a weekend, and it's really important that you understand what's happening because I've got an assignment for you at the end of today's chat. First, it's important to understand and to reinforce that the United States government is us. Literally, it is us electing people to represent us, our representatives, in Congress, in the House of Representatives, and in the Senate, where they make laws that reflect our wishes. Now, that's come under a lot of attack lately from the radical right, which has made it much harder to vote, has made it much harder for people to elect their representatives through gerrymandering, has made people get bad information through the flooding of uh, corporate money and the money of very rich people into our political system. But the idea is that Congress makes our laws, and then the president, the head of the executive branch, can either sign those pieces of legislation into law or veto them, at which point Congress can either override the president's veto, say, oopsie poopsie, you were right, which by the way almost never happens, or rewrite the laws so that the president then will sign them. All right, so that's really important because once Congress has written a law and the president has signed it, the president takes an oath to make sure that the laws are duly executed. That's the president's job. That's in the Constitution. That's in the oath that the president takes. All right, that's an important backdrop here because when Donald Trump took office 643 million years ago, I'm kidding, it's only been 2 weeks. But when he did that, one of the first things that came out of his administration, out of the Office of Management and Budget, which is the exactly what it sounds like, the executive branch's office that handles the disbursement of monies, for example. The first thing that came out of them was what they called one of the first things, not the first thing, was what they called a freeze on spending. And there is, of course, as of yet, no Senate confirmed leader of the Office of Management and Budget, which is usually abbreviated as OMB. But the person who's been nominated for that is Russell Vought, one of the people who was instrumental in writing Project 2025. So the first thing that the Office of Management and Budget did was they said, we're going to freeze the disbursement of federal monies until we can see whether or not they've been contaminated by DEI, diversity, equity, or inclusion. The idea that the government should, excuse me, rectify the inequities in American society that we have inherited through American history. Now, what the radical right is doing is they're using that concept of DEI to attack anything they don't like. It's shorthand for this is not a program that I want to support. But the monies that Congress has appropriated to fund something by law must be dispersed. That is given out. And that concept of holding that money back is called impoundment. and you impound the money and you say, well, you might have passed a law that says you want to put money into the Environmental Protection Agency. I disagree with that. I'm going to keep that money back. And in that case, the president might have signed a law, but not wanted to spend all the money that was appropriated in it. So he keeps the money back. Richard Nixon did this, and Congress was so appalled when Richard Nixon did it. In 1974, they passed a law literally called the Impoundment Control Act, which, to paraphrase, said, don't expletive try it. That's against the law. And of course, they've upheld that ever since. So as soon as the Trump administration tried to impound all the funds that were supposed to be being dispersed to keep grants and payments and funding going, a whole bunch of different people sued, a whole bunch of states sued, and a federal judge within days said, maybe it wasn't even days, said, what are you talking about? This is, as he said, blatantly unconstitutional. Of course you can't do this. And said, you can't do this. At that point, the Office of Management and Budget said, well, we're not going to do it. We're going to rescind that memo, or we're going to give, it all got very vague about what was going to happen, but they have tried to keep their hands on that money. Okay, so that was what happened before the weekend. Are you with me so far? I hope. I can't see if you're with me so far. Apparently everybody has been like either running behind or whatever. I hope you're with me so far, because so where we are is the Trump administration tried to stop disbursements. A federal judge said, this is blatantly unconstitutional. Don't even think about it. And then on Friday, Elon Musk, who is the billionaire who put more than $290 million into the 2024 campaign and who is now Trump's sidekick, pressured a certain guy to resign. And what happened was Musk's people tried to get this guy to hand over a really important set of access. And the guy is, I'm not going to give you his name because it's, in the scheme of things, he matters a lot. I've written about him, but he was essentially the guy who managed the checkbook for the United States. So he was in charge of the United States government payment system. So think about it. If you think about the government, which is us, and the Congress passes a bunch of laws and says we got to give out, and I'm making up these numbers, $50 here and $100 here and $75 here. Somebody's got to actually do it, right? Somebody's got to say, well, where's the bank account? How are we going to get this money to you? What is your information and all that? The Payment Office of the United States government handles about $6 trillion a year. So every time that somebody has any kind of financial doings with the federal government, somehow the fingers of the U.S. government payment system are on those exchanges. So that would be your Social Security number. That would be your tax refunds. If you're a federal employee, that would be your paychecks. It would be a grant you've gotten. It would be funding for something that you've gotten from the federal government. Anytime you and the federal government have had an interaction, a financial interaction, the U.S. government payment systems would have handled that. And that would include, if you did it electronically, that would include your taxes. That would include your Social Security number. That would include your date of birth. That would include, your financial fingerprint in the world. So the person who handled that until Friday had been at the Treasury since 1989. He had worked his way up to be this guy, the guy who handles all the payments. And he's, like the guy who manages a checkbook. He doesn't have any say in what gets paid. Like, he can't say, well, I disagree with that, I'm not going to pay that. But he's the guy who made sure everything worked. When on Friday, Musk's people tried to get access to those government payment systems. And he said, no, not happening. This is absolutely secure information. You cannot have it. He gets forced out. And Musk gets permission from the new Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent, who today said, I only gave him permission to look at stuff, not to do anything, which sounds a lot to me like a CYA move, if you know what CYA means. And what that means is that Musk's people got into the computers of the US government payment system. So take your heads right there and think of what that means Elon Musk's people have access to. Okay? It is the largest data breach in human history. Everything that the federal government has handled is potentially right now in Elon Musk's hands. And I want to be really clear, Elon Musk is not an elected member of the government. He is running the Department of Government Efficiency, which is so-called the Department of Government Efficiency. I call it DOGE, D-O-G-E, deliberately, because it is not a government agency. It has never been created by Congress. It has no legal authority. And so he's got this information, and what he began to do over the weekend, and I want to also emphasize here that a lot of what's going on is extremely vague. And that's really quite deliberate, because if it's very vague and you don't know what's happening, it's very hard to fight back. So he claims, and has claimed on social media, that he is reading through the payments that the US government has made or is supposed to make to different organizations and deciding which ones to keep and which ones are, in his mind, illegal. I mean, again, he has no authority here at all. And one of the ones that he boasted today about cutting, and I'm not going to give you the full name because I might well say it wrong and then people are going to freak out. It is a human services organization associated with the Lutheran Church. And again, I'm not saying these have been cut. I'm saying he says these have been cut. And they are not only the people who provide migrant services. Remember, the Republicans have really worked hard to devolve a lot of the things that the government had been doing itself to religious organizations. And this is one of those cases. This organization also funds nursing homes. So again, Trump claims that he is cutting this stuff. Think about what this means. Not only does it mean that certain things will stop happening, but it also means that if these places that rely on federal government funding, which is our money, suddenly don't have that federal government money, you're looking at layoffs. You're looking at things that simply can't operate any longer. You're looking at hospitals that don't get grants, that you're looking at law enforcement that suddenly can't make payroll. You're looking at all the places where the federal government has been active in the United States, suddenly at the mercy of Elon Musk. This is unbelievably problematic. All right. So just to be very clear here, Trump has said that he will not touch Social Security and Medicare. I'm just saying that. So I know people are really worried about that. I don't think we know what's going to happen. But if this is a real concern for you right now, that he has said nobody can touch. Medicaid is another question. Although they decided they were going to go after Medicaid and then they backed off. Similarly, they did the same thing with veterans benefits and then they backed off. The whole thing is a complete mess. But you're not going to lose your Social Security benefits tonight, as near as I can tell. All right, so don't lose sleep about that yet. We're going to go somewhere with this. All right, so again, Musk is claiming he has done this, but we don't know yet. I mean, this is just what he has put on social media. All right, we're not done yet. What happened yesterday is a really big deal, because yesterday, Musk's people tried to get into a secret area operated by USAID. And USAID is the thing that Musk and Trump are trying to get rid of. That's the $60 billion a year, which is less than 1% of the US budget, that the US has spent around the world. It hasn't spent that money around the world since this time, but in 1961, Congress brought together all the different foreign aid packages that the United States had been engaged with really since World War II, although there was some before that as well. And they put them together as USAID. It's the U.S. Agency for International Development, but it's known as USAID because it works on long-term socioeconomic development in other countries. And as I say, it's less than 1% of the budget. and it has been crucial to our standing in the world. It's soft power, where so you try and do good things around the world so people think better of you. And there's a big issue with the fact that Trump and Secretary of State Marco Rubio said they're going to kill USAID. They're going to get rid of it altogether, which basically rips up the 80 years of U.S. foreign policy. But for my purposes tonight, I want you to understand that Musk's people tried to get into the secret areas of USAID. And you sit there saying, why does USAID have secret areas, right? Because why is it secret when you're making sure malnourished children in Sudan have formula, right? Because USAID operates in the State Department. It's in the State Department. And the State Department is one of the many departments in the U.S. government, if you remember from when Trump had the case against him for retaining classified documents. And I kept saying every possible intelligence agency is mad at him because they were all listed in the lawsuit. State Department has an intelligence agency, and in my opinion, and I'm not like an expert in this, but in my opinion, they're the best of the bunch. I mean, they're incredibly good. But that means that breaching this USAID computer breached the State Department's intelligence. And there was a fight over it. Some reports say it was a physical fight. Some say it was, some don't say that. They don't say it wasn't, but they don't say that. But the top two people who were trying to keep Musk's people out of the USAID computers got taken away and put on administrative leave, and Musk's people got access to those computers. So what this means is that the Musk people now potentially have had access to U.S. intelligence computers. And that means they're all compromised. You have to assume that they are all compromised. Now, here's the real kicker for this. The kicker for this is that Wired, which is largely a technology magazine and very good, or media, not a magazine, online, did a story on this. And Musk's people who are doing this appear to be 6 young men from ages 19 to age 24. Who almost certainly have no idea what they're doing. Obviously they know what they're doing computer-wise, but the extraordinary breaches here of American law and of the Constitution and of American national security are what I characterized this morning on social media as a coup. And I am not the only one who is characterizing this as a coup. But while this is terribly frightening in many ways, these are 6 kids from ages 19 to 24. And that, to me, is worth bearing in mind when I tell you different ways to push back against this. All right, so here is my assignment for you. So somebody asked, why are they not being arrested? This is if there is genius to this, here's where it is. They're not operating within the law. They are operating in a gray zone. So if you think about this, who would arrest them? Well, you would arrest them for breaking and entering, right? Except the people whose space they're invading didn't call the cops. And they're saying they're there because of Musk, and he's covering for them. And Musk is saying, I'm doing this legally because I'm doing what Donald Trump set out in an executive order. That's a lie. Trump wrote the executive order, or he signed it. He didn't write it. But you can't do that. You can't hand over America's laws to anyone by saying, hey, you can go ahead and break the law. It just doesn't work that way. But it means that it's much harder for people to push back than it would be if you deliberately broke a law, and then they could say, this is the person harmed, and this is the person who's going to sue, and here's what the judge is going to say. So operating in this gray zone means that there's really one major way to deal with this, which is not legal, it's political. And that's what the framers of the Constitution set up, and that's impeachment. So Scott Bessent needs to answer some questions about why he permitted the breach of Americans' privacy. That's breaking the law. And Donald Trump and J.D. Vance have to answer for what they are permitting to happen. This is the whole reason we have high crimes and misdemeanors rather than you have to break a specific law, because in this case, what they are breaking is the constitutional order. And Timothy Snyder, who's a scholar of authoritarianism, has a fabulous piece today in his newsletter called Thinking About, which I don't think is paywalled, in which he says the point here is to destroy the United States of America. The point is to break things, not necessarily to rebuild them, because if you break everything, Americans will be happy to see a strong man who looks like he at least will be a person that you can beg for help. And the whole point is to destroy the U.S. government. So now, while you're all sitting here thinking, what are we going to do? Because impeachment, oh, come on, we tried that a million times and the Republicans let him off. And Scott Bessent, well, maybe that something will happen. It's lovely for me to sit here and say that, but that's the solution. I'm not saying it's going to work. What I am telling you is I told you I was going to give you an assignment. And that is, you can find a lot of people online saying, of course, to work for and to defend specific races, like the fact that in North Carolina, the Republicans are still trying to steal a Supreme Court justice's seat from a Democrat. There is an election coming up on a Supreme Court seat in Wisconsin. Those two matter because of gerrymandering. But you can also participate by every day calling all of your local member, your representative, your senators, and the people in your local government. And there's actually a thing going around that explains how you do it, how you talk to them. I mean, there are all those things that are out there, but I've got a different assignment for you, and that is this. People who voted for Donald Trump, I don't believe voted to have a multi-billionaire, the richest man in the world from South Africa, have access to their private information and access to whether or not they're going to get government benefits, which is at the bottom line what is happening here. But they don't know it's going on because right-wing media from the Fox News channel across the board is not reporting it. I believe that if people who voted for Donald Trump, maybe not the extreme MAGAs who have suddenly turned themselves into paying higher prices for food as a sign of patriotism, but people who voted for Donald Trump because they thought they were just getting a different flavor of American government, I don't think they voted to turn over the American government to Elon Musk. But they don't know it's happening. So here is my assignment for you. Yes, does it help to call blue state members of Congress? Yes, and to reinforce, especially Congress people, especially senators, that you care about the power of the Senate. Because I've talked so much about how power is sloshing around. Right now, the person who's grabbing it is Elon Musk. And he doesn't have any legal authority to do that, or constitutional authority, but everybody is sort of standing back and going, oh, gee, he can't do that. Well, no, he can't, but somebody's got to stop him. And one of the ways to put real pressure on lawmakers is for those people who voted Republican to stand up and say, hang on, why did you give my social security number and all of my financial information to a billionaire born in another country? So my assignment for you all is to make sure, whether you post it on social media, whether you talk to people, this is not about politics or partisanship. This is about whether or not we want the United States government to be in the hands of a single man, a single billionaire, who at this moment is sitting there tweeting on X that he is cutting programs and policies that the U.S. Congress established. And we're in a constitutional crisis, but it's not over. I mean, the number of people who are sort of saying, oh, it's over, everything is over. No, it's not. It is not over. But the people who are still supporting Donald Trump, Elon Musk, JD Vance, and the tech bros. And mind you, there's a lot of MAGA people in that, because remember, there's a serious impulse in MAGA that came from Steve Bannon, which is against those guys. They need to know that Trump has turned the government over to Elon Musk. And that's not sort of some vague, oh, he's turned the government over. This is literally the man's computers are the ones that are running the US government's treasury payment system. And that means all the payments that have anything to do with the federal government right now are in the hands of Elon Musk. And that, I think, is an issue that if people just knew about it, we'd hear a lot more about. Now, I didn't talk at all about the tariffs that Trump is imposing on Tuesday on Mexico, Canada, and China. There, too, I think what we're going to see, if they go into effect, is extraordinary pain, especially in the MAGA areas of the country, especially in Republican-dominated states, because Canada, at least, has targeted its tariffs to those regions. And what I would love to urge you to do, and there's almost 41,000 people here, is make sure that the people you know who voted for Donald Trump, and none of this, you were an idiot, none of this, is this what you wanted, any of this, they need to know that Elon Musk has control of all of their financial information, and that unless they are stopped, he can do whatever he wants with it. And that will provide at least a lot more leverage for those of us who are trying to hold the Constitution and the laws of this country together. Again, this is not about partisanship. If anybody here is a MAGA voter, welcome aboard. We must stop this. Get this into right-wing circles so that people know it's happening. Because if we don't stop it and stop it fast, the damage that these guys do is not going to be replaceable or fixable. Because if you stop all of these payments for even 2 or 3 weeks, you kill those institutions. And you can't just start it again. This is how you start depressions, is things cascade. There is still time to turn this around, but we have to move as quickly as they do. And right now, people complain bitterly about lawmakers and about the courts. They're doing the best they can, but courts are slow, as we know from the last 4 years, and they can be slowed down. And lawmakers are trying desperately to stop things, but there's a limit to how much the Democrats can do when the Republicans control both houses of Congress and the White House and the Supreme Court, and are, at this point, still behind Donald Trump. Those are the people we have to work on to make sure they understand what is happening. And I will tell you, again, I keep reiterating, but they don't know what's happening. If you watch right-wing media, you do not know this has happened. And it is in the newspapers, but it's in the newspapers in that sort of, gee, this seems like it's blatantly unconstitutional kind of way. And that's what Trump and Musk, really, I don't think Trump is on top of this. I think this is Musk, is taking advantage of, is that if he smashes it first, by the time the courts catch up and by the time the law catches up, it'll be too late. It'll already have been destroyed. And we need to stop that from happening. So it's a really scary time here. I urge you to be with friends. Don't be alone. Reach out to people. But don't think it's all over yet, because it absolutely is not. Remember, the people who have breached these computers appear to be 6 young men from ages 19 to 24. 6. And there's 332 million people in this country. We can stop this, but we must make sure people know it's happening and get them to speak up as well. Because if Republican-dominated states and people in Republican-dominated counties and districts start to call their elected leaders and say, WTAF, that's when things really will move. All right, so I'm really sorry to scare you, and I know you are scared. I cannot sugarcoat this. It's a really big deal, but I do want to emphasize it is not over, not by a long shot, but People keep asking me what they can do. What we can do is we can break into those circles where people are not hearing that this is happening and make them understand, again, in a really nonpartisan way, that Elon Musk has just walked away with the computers that control our treasury and payments out of the treasury, both into and out of the treasury, and potentially our national security computers. And that's terrifying. Not, however, too late to turn it back. Lots of people writing online about things you can do, other things you can do. Get involved. Do not be alone. Find one or two things at least that you can do every single day that make you feel empowered, because they want you to feel helpless. They want you to be scared. And if we stick together and refuse to do that, we can not only stop this from happening, we can make the changes in the United States that are long overdue. All right. Thank you for being here. Sorry to be scary. I promise you that America is still standing, and we will do all we can to keep it that way. We just got to do it together. Thank you for being here.